Have you ever felt the weight of someone's indifference, as though their silence or dismissal was meant to erase you? They walked away, smirking, assuming they had stripped you of your power. Maybe you sat there, replaying every moment, questioning your worth. Their laughter at your silence cuts deep, doesn't it? They think they've won. But what if I told you that their assumptions about your silence reveal their greatest weakness, not yours? Too often we buy into a false narrative. That silence means surrender, that pulling back is a sign of weakness, or that by not reacting, we're letting them win. But this belief is a trap, a misconception crafted by those who thrive on control. They think they understand the game, but they don't even see the board you're playing on. Because silence, when used wisely, is not submission. It is strategy. It is strength. It is stoicism in action. Imagine this. While they're reveling in what they think is their victory, you're quietly rebuilding. You're not just surviving their games, you're transforming. They laugh at your silence, thinking they've broken you. But what they fail to grasp is that silence is not the absence of action. It's the presence of power. In this journey, we'll dismantle the lies they've told themselves about you. You'll see how silence becomes your weapon, your freedom, your ultimate strength. By the end, you won't just understand the game, you'll leave it entirely, standing tall in a life they'll never touch. And oh, that's the victory they never saw coming. So let's begin. Let's show them that while they were busy laughing, you were becoming unstoppable. 1. The calm before the storm. Let's start where they think the story ends, your silence. They see your withdrawal as a sign of defeat. You're done chasing, done explaining, done giving energy to their endless games. To them, this silence means they've won. But pause for a moment, have they? Or is their interpretation of your stillness just another example of their inability to see beyond their own ego? Consider this. Silence, in its purest form, is not a reaction. It's a decision. A deliberate choice to step back from chaos and reclaim your own peace. It's not about them, it's about you. But their mistake is believing your silence revolves around their existence. They assume it's a tactic, a weak ploy to make them miss you. How predictable, they think. How boring. Yet they fail to understand the deeper truth, that your silence is not surrender, but the prelude to something much greater. Picture a volcano. From the outside, it seems dormant, quiet, unassuming. Yet beneath the surface, immense pressure builds. The silence is not the absence of activity, but the gathering of unstoppable power. And one day, without warning, it erupts, reshaping everything in its path. That's you. Your silence is the calm before the storm, the stillness before transformation. But here's the question. Do they see it coming? Or are they too blinded by their own arrogance to realize that their supposed victory is the very thing that fuels your growth? Let's not pretend this is easy. Choosing silence requires restraint, patience, and an understanding of your own worth. It means resisting the urge to explain yourself, to demand acknowledgement, or to seek validation from someone who was never capable of giving it. Ask yourself, how many times have you tried to prove your value to someone who refused to see it? How often have you poured your energy into someone who only gave you indifference in return? Silence then becomes an act of liberation. It's your way of saying, I don't need your approval. I don't need your attention. I am enough without you. Yet they will laugh. They will mock your stillness, convinced it's proof of their control. Let them. Because while they sit smug, mistaking your silence for weakness, they're oblivious to the truth, that you've already stepped out of their grasp. They think you're waiting for them to notice, to regret, to realize what they lost. But they couldn't be more wrong. Your silence isn't about them, it never was. This is stoicism in action. The ability to remain unshaken by their noise, to rise above their petty games, and to find strength in the stillness they fail to understand. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the essence of your silence. It's not a reaction to them, it's a declaration of your own power. But let's address the doubt that creeps in during those quiet moments. Maybe you're wondering if they're right. If your silence really is a sign of weakness, if they truly hold the upper hand. Here's the truth. Their laughter doesn't matter. Their opinions don't define you. What matters is what you choose to do with your silence. Will you let it become a weight that drags you down? Or will you use it as the foundation for your transformation? The answer lies in your next move. This is not the time to shrink back or to let their assumptions dictate your reality. This is the time to gather your strength, to redirect your energy inward, and to prepare for the eruption they never saw coming. Let them laugh. Let them think they've won. Because while they're stuck in their shallow games, you're building something they'll never touch. A life rooted in purpose, resilience, and freedom. And when the storm comes, they won't even know what hit them. 2. The flip they never saw coming. What do people who thrive on control fear the most? The answer is simple: unpredictability. They thrive on patterns, on knowing your every move before you make it, on assuming they can pull your strings and make you dance. But what happens when you step out of the script? What happens when you refuse to play their game entirely? That's the flip they never saw coming. Your silence, what they think is their victory, is actually your greatest move. While they sit there analyzing, overthinking, and convincing themselves they've won, you're not even in the same game anymore. You've moved on. You're building something new, something they'll never be a part of. And that realization, when it finally hits, is going to shatter their carefully constructed reality. Think about this. Manipulators operate like chess players. Every action they take is calculated to provoke a reaction from you. They thrive on the push and pull, the drama, the endless cycle of giving and taking. They assume you're just like them, caught up in the same petty strategies. When you retreat into silence, they don't see it as strength. They see it as just another move on the board. Predictable, they think. How boring. But what they fail to understand is that you've stopped playing altogether. You've left the arena, walked away from the board, and taken your power with you. To them, your silence is a tool, a ploy to lure them back, to make them miss you. But to you, it's freedom. It's a clean break from their toxic games. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. Ask yourself, why do they assume your silence is about them? Why do they think you're sitting there, hoping for their attention, longing for their acknowledgement? The answer is revealing. It's because their entire sense of worth depends on the reactions they provoke in others. They project their own insecurities onto you, believing you can't exist without their validation because they can't exist without yours. But here's the twist. Your silence isn't about them at all. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about redirecting the energy once wasted on them into something far more valuable, your own growth, your own happiness, your own future. And that, my friend, is a power they'll never understand. Imagine their confusion when they realize they're not the center of your universe anymore. Picture them sitting there trying to figure out why you're not reacting, not reaching out, not begging for their attention. That's the moment the flip happens. That's when the illusion they've built around themselves begins to crumble. They thought they knew you, thought they could predict your every move. But now they're left questioning everything. Here's the beauty of the flip. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's quiet, steady, and completely unexpected. While they're busy playing their little games, you're creating a life so full, so rich, so fulfilling, that they become irrelevant. And when they finally notice, it'll be too late. This is where Stoicism shines. Marcus Aurelius teaches us to focus only on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and choices. When you stop giving your energy to people who don't deserve it, you take back control of your life. You stop reacting to their chaos and start building something they can never touch. And that's the ultimate victory. But let's be honest, this isn't just about them. It's about you. What do you want your life to look like? Who do you want to become? Because the flip isn't just about walking away from their games, it's about walking towards something better. It's about choosing your own peace, your own joy, your own path. It's about realizing that you never needed them to begin with. Maybe you're thinking, but what if they don't notice? What if they don't regret losing me? Let me tell you something powerful. It doesn't matter. Their regret, or lack of it, has no bearing on your worth. You're not doing this for them, you're doing this for you. Because the real prize isn't their attention, it's your freedom. And oh, the freedom that comes with not needing anyone's validation. The freedom to wake up every day knowing your value doesn't depend on someone else's opinion. The freedom to build a life so full of purpose and passion that their absence feels like a blessing, not a loss. That's the flip they never saw coming. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a desperate plea for closure, but the quiet realization that you've outgrown them entirely. So let them think they've won. Let them laugh at your silence, convinced it's a sign of defeat. Because while they're stuck in their petty games, you're already gone, living a life they can't even comprehend. And that, my friend, is a victory they'll never take from you. If this resonates with you, take a moment to let us know. Hit like and comment number 1 below if you're ready to embrace the power of your silence. And if you're finding strength in these words, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a chance to reclaim your power. Let's keep growing together, because your story is just beginning. 3. Reclaiming power like a Stoic. Power. What does it mean to truly reclaim it? To stand in the middle of a storm and remain unshaken, even when the winds howl and the waves crash against you. This is what they don't understand, what they will never understand about you. They think power comes from controlling others, from manipulating emotions, from forcing someone to react. But real power, the kind that changes everything, comes from within. And reclaiming that power starts with a decision. I will no longer give my energy to what I cannot control. Think about this. How often do we surrender our power without realizing it? Every time you chase after someone's approval, every time you argue with someone who refuses to listen, every time you replay a painful moment in your mind, you're giving away a piece of yourself. You're letting someone else determine your worth, your happiness, your peace. And for what? For a fleeting moment of acknowledgement. For validation that never truly satisfies. This is where Stoicism offers clarity. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, our responses. Marcus Aurelius, the great philosopher emperor, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words are more than ancient wisdom, they're a guide for reclaiming the power you may have forgotten was always yours. When someone dismisses you, disrespects you, or tries to manipulate you, their goal is to provoke a reaction. They want you to fight, to explain, to justify your feelings. Why? Because your reaction gives them power. It confirms that they matter enough to upset you, that they still hold sway over your emotions. But what happens when you don't react? When you refuse to play their game? That's when the balance shifts. That's when you reclaim your power. Imagine this. They expect you to argue, plead, to send one last message explaining how much they've hurt you. They expect you to spiral, to crumble under the weight of their indifference. But instead, you choose stillness. You choose silence. Not as a tactic to make them miss you, but as an act of self-preservation. You're not waiting for their apology or their acknowledgement. You're simply walking away because you've outgrown their games. In that moment, you become untouchable. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't react. They can't control someone who refuses to engage. And that's what terrifies them the most, not your silence itself, but what it represents. It represents a version of you they never anticipated, strong, calm, and entirely out of their reach. But let's not romanticize this process. Reclaiming power isn't easy. It requires discipline, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront the parts of yourself that are still tied to them. Maybe you're still carrying anger, resentment, or regret. Maybe you're tempted to reach out, to explain yourself, to seek closure. That's natural. But here's the truth. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. Ask yourself, what am I holding onto? Why do I need their acknowledgement? What would change if I simply let go? These questions aren't meant to shame you. They're meant to free you. Because the moment you realize you don't need their validation, their attention, or their approval, you take back the power they thought they had over you. Reclaiming power also means understanding the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is impulsive, emotional, and often fueled by the need to prove something. Responding, on the other hand, is deliberate and grounded. It's choosing not to let their actions dictate your emotions. It's deciding that your peace is more important than their chaos. Picture this: you're a ship in the middle of a storm. The waves are high, the wind is relentless, and the skies are dark. But deep within the ship lies an anchor, strong, steady, unyielding. No matter how violent the storm, the anchor holds. That anchor is your inner strength, your ability to remain calm and centered no matter what happens around you. This is what it means to reclaim power like a Stoic. It's not about fighting the storm, it's about standing firm in the midst of it. Now consider this. What would happen if you stopped chasing after people who don't value you? What would happen if you redirected all that energy inward, into your own growth, your own dreams, your own peace? The people who laughed at your silence, who thought they had defeated you, would see a version of you they can't control. And isn't that the ultimate victory? Reclaiming power like a Stoic is also about setting boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. It's about recognizing the moments when you're tempted to give in, to react, to explain. It's about reminding yourself that not every insult, every slight, every betrayal deserves your attention. As Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." They craved power over you, but you've taken away the one thing they can't survive without: your attention. Remember, power isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. It's about finding peace in the midst of chaos, about standing tall when everything around you tries to break you. It's about choosing to be your own rescue, rather than waiting for someone else to save you. And when you reclaim that power, something incredible happens. You realize that you don't need their validation, their apology, or their acknowledgement. You don't need them to see your worth, because you've always been worthy. The power they thought they had over you was an illusion, a mask they wore to hide their own insecurities. But now the mask is cracking, and you're rising above it all. This is your moment to reclaim what was always yours. Not by fighting, not by explaining, but by choosing to rise. By choosing to build a life so full, so rich, so powerful, that their absence becomes irrelevant. This is what it means to reclaim power like a Stoic, to stand in your truth, to own your strength, and to move forward without looking back. 4. The mask they wear is cracking. Let's talk about the mask, the one they wear so carefully, so deliberately, to project power, confidence, and control. To the outside world, they seem untouchable, like nothing can rattle them. They flash the perfect smile, say the right words, and play the part of someone who always wins. But here's the truth they'll never admit. That mask is fragile. It's not made of steel, it's made of thin, cracking glass. And every lie they tell, every manipulation they perform, every heart they break adds another fracture. Now let's dig deeper. Why do they need this mask? Why do they go to such lengths to project an image of superiority? It's simple. They're terrified of being seen for who they really are. Behind the mask lies fear, insecurity, and a desperate need for validation. They crave power over others because they lack power over themselves. And they'll do whatever it takes to keep that truth hidden, even from themselves. But here's the part they didn't plan for. You saw through it. Maybe not at first, but eventually you started to notice the cracks. The way their words didn't match their actions. The way they dismissed your feelings while demanding your attention. The way they tried to control the narrative, even when it no longer made sense. Piece by piece, their mask began to crumble. And you realized something powerful. They weren't as strong as they pretended to be. Think about this. Every time they ignored you, dismissed your feelings, or played their little games, it wasn't a sign of strength. It was a sign of weakness. They needed to feel superior, because the idea of being ordinary, or worse, irrelevant, terrified them. And that's why they laughed at your silence, not because it meant they'd won, but because they couldn't handle what your silence represented. That you no longer needed them to validate your worth. But here's the twist. While they sit there, pretending everything is fine, the cracks in their mask are spreading. They'll try to cover them up with more lies, more manipulation, more false confidence. But the truth has a way of catching up. They can't run from it forever. Eventually, the mask will break completely, and they'll be left with nothing but the hollow reality they've been trying to escape. Ask yourself, why did they try so hard to make you feel small? Why did they thrive on keeping you unsure of yourself, second-guessing your value? It's because they saw something in you they lacked. Your authenticity, your ability to love deeply, your willingness to show up even when it was hard, all of that scared them. Because it reminded them of everything they weren't. They wore their mask to hide their own insecurities, while you faced your struggles head-on. But now they're losing control. They thought they could manipulate you forever, keep you hooked on their games. But your silence changed everything. It forced them to face the cracks they've been avoiding, the flaws they've been hiding. And that's the part they never expected, that you would see through the illusion and walk away without looking back. This is where Stoicism becomes your greatest ally. The Stoics teach us to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Seneca once said, "It is the power of a great mind to be unperturbed by external events." Their mask, their manipulations, their laughter, it's all external. It has no real power over you unless you give it meaning. By seeing through their mask, you've reclaimed that power. You've stopped letting their false image define your reality. But let's not forget, their mask isn't your responsibility. It's not your job to expose them or to force them to face the truth. Their own actions will do that for you. Every game they play, every person they hurt, every lie they tell, it all adds up. And when the mask finally breaks, they'll have no one to blame but themselves. Imagine this, while they're busy trying to hold their facade together, you're thriving. You're not wasting your energy trying to prove anything to them. You're building a life so full of authenticity and purpose that their opinion no longer matters. And when they finally realize what they've lost, it will be too late. So let them think they've won. Let them believe their mask is still intact. Because while they're stuck in their cycle of lies and manipulation, you've already moved on. You've stepped into a world where their games have no power, where their opinions don't define you. That's the ultimate victory, not revenge, not confrontation, but freedom. If this resonates with you, take a moment to let us know. Hit like and comment number 1 below if you're ready to embrace your freedom. And don't forget to subscribe. This journey toward strength, clarity, and resilience is only beginning. Together, we'll continue to rise above the noise and claim the lives we deserve. 5. The fall they never saw coming. Picture this, a grand tower reaching high into the sky. From the outside, it looks impressive, solid, immovable, and carefully constructed. But beneath the surface, it's hollow. The bricks are stolen, the foundation is weak, and the structure is held together by lies, manipulation, and false promises. At first glance, it appears indestructible, but time has a way of revealing what's hidden. When the storms come, the cracks begin to show. And no matter how grand the facade, a collapse becomes inevitable. That tower is them. For so long, they've worked tirelessly to craft an image of strength, control, and superiority. They've played their games, moved their pieces, and convinced themselves they're untouchable. They've climbed high, using others as stepping stones, believing they could stay on top forever. But here's the truth they don't want to face. A structure built on deception will always fall. And when it does, it's not a gentle descent, it's a collapse. At first, they won't notice the cracks. They'll be too busy basking in the glow of their perceived victory, laughing at your silence, convinced they've won. They'll tell themselves stories to reinforce their illusion. They're predictable. They're weak. They'll come back. But as time goes on, the cracks in their facade begin to spread. Their lies start to catch up to them. Their manipulations stop working. The people they once controlled begin to see through them. And suddenly, the tower they built begins to sway. Why does this happen? Why do those who build their lives on power over others eventually fall? The answer lies in their foundation. They've spent so much time perfecting their mask, hiding their insecurities, projecting confidence, and controlling others that they've neglected the most important part of any structure, the core. Behind their charm, their arrogance, and their endless games lies an emptiness they refuse to confront. They've relied on others to fill that void, feeding off the energy, attention, and validation of those around them. But when those people stop playing along, when their games no longer work, that void becomes inescapable. Now, consider this. They walked away from you believing they'd left you behind, believing you were just another chapter they could close and forget. They thought their absence would leave you broken, stuck in a cycle of pain and longing. But while they were busy celebrating what they thought was their victory, something remarkable happened. You rose. Slowly, steadily, and silently, you began to rebuild. You stopped giving your power to them and redirected it toward yourself. You turned their rejection into your transformation. This is where their fall begins, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with your quiet decision to move on. They expected you to stay trapped in their shadow, replaying the past, waiting for their return. But instead, you've stepped into the light. You've created a life that no longer includes them, a life where their games hold no power. And when they finally realize what's happened, it will hit them like a storm they never prepared for. Let's pause here and ask the important question. Why does your absence affect them so much? Why does the idea of you moving on bother them, even when they acted as if you didn't matter? The answer lies in their need for control. To them, relationships aren't about connection or mutual respect. They're about power. They need to feel like they're the center of your world, the one you can't live without. Your silence disrupts that narrative. It forces them to face a reality they've been running from, that they're not as indispensable as they believed. But it's not just your silence that shakes them. It's what your silence represents. It's the fact that you've stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped needing them. It's the realization that their presence in your life was never as significant as they convinced themselves it was. And that realization, when it finally hits, is devastating. Imagine them sitting in their tower, watching as the people they once controlled slip away, one by one. Imagine the moment they realized that their power was an illusion built on the reactions and emotions of others. Without those reactions, without that control, they're left with nothing but themselves. And that's the one thing they've been avoiding all along. The fall they never saw coming isn't about losing you. It's about losing the version of themselves they created in your eyes. They thrived on the idea that they were the prize, the one worth chasing. But now they're forced to confront a harsh truth. Their value was never real. It was a projection, a mask they wore to hide their own insecurities. And when that mask finally breaks, they'll see the emptiness they've been running from all along. But here's the part they didn't plan for. While they're stuck in the wreckage of their own lies, you're thriving. You've become someone they can't control, someone they can't manipulate. And that's what terrifies them the most. Not your silence, but your transformation. They thought they'd written the final chapter of your story, but you've proven them wrong. Your silence wasn't the end, it was the beginning. This is where Stoicism offers profound wisdom. Epictetus once said, "We suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them." Their actions, their games, their manipulations, they don't define you. What defines you is how you respond, how you rise, how you reclaim your power. By choosing to let go, by refusing to engage in their chaos, you've broken free from their control. And in doing so, you've set the stage for their inevitable fall. But let's be clear. Their fall isn't your responsibility. It's not your job to expose them, to confront them, or to make them see the error of their ways. Life will do that for you. The choices they've made, the lies they've told, the people they've hurt, all of it will catch up to them in time. And when it does, they'll be forced to face the truth they've been avoiding. Picture this. Late at night, when the world is quiet and there's no one left to fool, they'll feel it. The weight of everything they've done will settle on their shoulders. They'll remember the people they've pushed away, the connections they've destroyed, the opportunities they've squandered. And in those moments, they'll realize what they've lost, not just you, but the best version of themselves they could have been. The poet Percy Bysshe Shelley wrote, "Fear not for the future, weep not for the past, but they will weep. Not because they've changed, not because they regret hurting you, but because they've lost access to the light you brought into their life. They'll look for it in others, chasing shallow connections, temporary distractions, and empty validation. But nothing will compare to what they lost when you walked away. And you'll be miles ahead, living a life they can't touch, a life they'll never be part of. Because while they were busy playing games, you were building something real. While they were focused on control, you were focused on growth. And that's the ultimate difference between you and them. You don't need a mask to face the world. You don't need to hide behind lies or manipulation. You're strong enough to stand in your truth, to own your flaws, and to rise above the chaos. So let them fall. Let their tower crumble under the weight of its own lies. Because their fall isn't about you, it's about them. And while they're stuck in the ruins of the life they built, you're already living in the future, a future full of strength, purpose, and freedom. Remember, the fall they never saw coming wasn't because of anything you did. It was because of everything they failed to do. They failed to see your worth, to value your love, to recognize your strength. And now they're left with nothing but the consequences of their own actions. That's not your burden to carry. Your only job is to keep rising, to keep building, and to keep thriving. Because their fall is theirs alone, but your rise, that's yours to claim. 6. You are the prize, not them. Let's flip the script for a moment. They walked away, didn't they? Confident, self-assured, maybe even smug. In their minds, they were the prize, the one you were lucky to have, the one you could never replace. They believed their absence would leave you shattered, longing, stuck in an endless cycle of what could have been. But now, let's ask the real question. Who was the prize all along? Was it ever really them, or was it you? Here's the truth they couldn't see. It was never about them. They were never the treasure they pretended to be. The real prize was you, your love, your loyalty, your unwavering commitment. You were the one who stayed when things got hard, who gave without asking for anything in return, who believed in them even when they didn't deserve it. And yet they treated you like an option, like something disposable, replaceable. But let me tell you something powerful. You are irreplaceable. Ask yourself, what did they really bring to your life? Was it love, respect, and growth? Or was it lies, manipulation, and a constant feeling of not being enough? They played games to keep you hooked, to make you feel like you needed them. But the truth is, they needed you far more than you ever needed them. Your presence, your kindness, your strength, those were the gifts that elevated them. And when they walked away, they didn't take the prize, they left it behind. Think about it. What kind of person walks away from someone who loved them, supported them, stood by them? Someone who doesn't recognize value when it's right in front of them. Someone who's so consumed by their own ego that they can't see the treasure they've been given. And while they're off chasing illusions, believing they can replace you, they'll eventually come to a harsh realization. People like you don't come around twice. You see, they built their self-worth on the idea that you were chasing them, that you couldn't live without them. They convinced themselves that they were the ones bringing value to the relationship. But let's flip that perspective. Who was the one showing up day after day, even when things were tough? Who was the one giving, forgiving, and holding everything together? It wasn't them, it was you. This is where Stoicism becomes your guiding light. Maya Angelou once said, "Never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option." The Stoics echo this sentiment. Focus on what truly matters, on what aligns with your values and your worth. You are not an option. You are not someone to be picked up and discarded when it suits them. You are the constant, the unwavering source of strength and light. And when you recognize that, everything changes. Let's take this further. Imagine them years down the line, looking back on what they lost. Maybe they'll try to convince themselves they made the right choice, that they moved on to something better. But deep down, they'll know the truth. They walked away from someone extraordinary. They gave up the one person who truly cared for them, who saw them for who they were, and still chose to stay. And that realization, that's their burden to carry, not yours. But don't misunderstand me. This isn't about revenge. It's not about hoping they regret their choices or wishing for their world to fall apart. That's not your path, and it never was. This is about reclaiming your own narrative, recognizing your own value, and stepping into the life you deserve. You don't need their acknowledgement to validate your worth. You've always been enough, with or without them. Let's ask another question. What makes someone truly valuable? Is it their ability to manipulate others, to play games, to wear a mask of confidence? Or is it their capacity for love, for authenticity? for showing up fully even when it's hard. You already know the answer. True value comes from within, from being someone who lives with integrity, who loves deeply, who chooses honesty over illusion. And that's exactly who you are. While they were busy pretending to be the prize, you were the one bringing real value to the table. You were the one who loved without conditions, who gave without expecting anything in return. And that's why their absence doesn't define you. Because the real prize was never them. It was the light, the strength, and the love you brought into the world. Here's a powerful thought. Imagine what happens when you take all that energy, all that love, and redirect it inward. Imagine what your life could look like when you stop giving your best to someone who never appreciated it and start pouring it into yourself. The person they left behind isn't the same person who's rising now. You've grown, you've transformed, and you've stepped into a version of yourself they'll never have access to again. They thought they could replace you. They thought they could find someone else to fill the space you once occupied. But the truth is, people like you don't come around often. Your love, your loyalty, your authenticity, they're rare. And when they finally realize that, it will be too late. By then, you'll be living a life so full, so meaningful, that their opinion will be nothing more than a faint whisper in the distance. The poet Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." Your worth has never been tied to their acknowledgement. It's always been within you, waiting for you to see it. And now that you do, you're unstoppable. This is your time to rise, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. To step into the fullness of who you are and embrace the truth that you are, and always have been, the prize. Let them chase their illusions. Let them cling to their mask. Let them believe they've moved on to something better. None of it matters anymore. Because you're not looking back. You're building a future they'll never be a part of. A future filled with strength, purpose, and freedom. If this resonates with you, let us know. Hit like and comment number 1 below if you're ready to embrace your worth and reclaim your power. And don't forget to subscribe. This journey towards strength, self-discovery, and freedom is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what's next. Together, we'll continue to rise, proving that the best version of yourself was never dependent on them. It was always within you. 7. The flip they never saw coming. Imagine this. Your opponent sits across from you in a game they believe they've already won. They're so certain of their victory, so consumed by their own confidence, that they stop paying attention. They laugh, thinking the game is over. But then, just when they're least expecting it, you make a move they never saw coming. Everything shifts. The power they thought they held evaporates. And in that moment, they realize they were never in control. This is what happens when you stop playing their game. They were counting on your reaction, your need for closure, your desire to explain yourself. They expected you to reach out, to fight for their attention, to stay trapped in the cycle they created. But instead, you chose silence, not as a tactic to win them back, but as a declaration of freedom. And that choice, that's the flip they never saw coming. Think about this. They've spent their entire lives perfecting their strategies, mastering the art of manipulation, and convincing themselves they can predict everyone's next move. They thrive on chaos, on emotional outbursts, on the push and pull of power dynamics. To them, relationships aren't about connection or mutual respect. They're about control. They assume everyone operates the same way, that everyone plays by the same rules. But when you stop reacting, when you refuse to play their game, their entire framework collapses. Here's where it gets interesting. While they're busy analyzing your silence, trying to figure out if it's part of some strategy to make them miss you, you're not even thinking about them. You've left the arena entirely. And that's the one thing they never prepared for. They assumed your world revolved around them, that your every move was somehow connected to their existence. But now they're left with a reality they can't understand. Your silence isn't about them. It's about you. Let's pause for a moment and ask a question. Why do they struggle so much with your lack of reaction? Why does your silence feel like a threat to them? The answer lies in their need for validation. Manipulators at their core are deeply insecure. They rely on the reactions of others to feel powerful, to feel important. Your silence disrupts that dynamic. It forces them to confront something they've been avoiding, their own emptiness. But this isn't just about them. This is about you and the transformation that happens when you walk away from their chaos. In the stillness of your silence, you've been growing, healing, and becoming someone they can't touch. You've turned inward, focusing on your own goals, dreams, and purpose. While they're stuck in the past, replaying the same old games, you're building a future so bright it blinds them. That's the power of the flip. They thought they knew you, but they never anticipated the person you've become. Now imagine the moment they realize what's happened. Maybe it's subtle at first, a fleeting thought, a nagging feeling that something's different. They might brush it off, telling themselves you'll come back eventually. But as time goes on, that illusion becomes harder to maintain. They start to notice the ways you've changed, the ways you've grown. And then it hits them. They're not in your story anymore. While they were busy trying to win, you moved on to a new chapter, a chapter where they have no role to play. Here's the beauty of the flip. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong or making them regret their choices. It's about reclaiming your narrative and choosing a life that aligns with your values. The flip is the quiet, steady realization that you don't need their acknowledgement, their apology, or their approval. You don't need anything from them because everything you need is already within you. This is where Stoicism becomes your foundation. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Their opinions, their games, their manipulations, they all lie outside your control. By letting go of your need to engage with them, you've freed yourself from their grasp. You've taken back your power, not through confrontation, but through transformation. Let's ask another question. What does your life look like now that they're no longer at the center of it? What happens when you stop giving your energy to someone who never appreciated it and start pouring it into yourself? The answer is simple. You flourish. You become the person you were always meant to be, unburdened by their expectations and free to live on your own terms. And that, my friend, is the ultimate flip. Picture this. While they're stuck in their endless cycle of games and manipulations, you're thriving in ways they can't even imagine. You're pursuing your passions, building meaningful relationships, and creating a life filled with purpose and joy. And when they finally look up from their game, they won't recognize the person you've become. You'll be untouchable, unshaken, and entirely out of their reach. But let's not overlook the most important part of this transformation. It's not about them. It's never been about them. The flip isn't a move you make to affect them. It's a move you make for yourself. It's about choosing to live a life that's authentic, fulfilling, and aligned with your true self. It's about stepping into your power and realizing that you were always enough. So let them think they've won. Let them laugh at your silence. Let them convince themselves they're still in control. None of it matters anymore, because while they're busy playing the same old game, you've already won. You've left the arena, you've rewritten the rules, and you've created a life that no longer includes them. The flip they never saw coming isn't about defeating them, it's about rising above them. It's about choosing growth over games, peace over chaos, and freedom over control. And when they finally realize what's happened, it will be too late. They'll see the life you've built, the person you've become, and they'll know, deep down, that they were never truly in the game to begin with. This is your moment. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove everything to yourself, to stand tall, to live fully, and to embrace the truth that you've outgrown their world entirely. Because the flip isn't just about them seeing what they've lost, it's about you realizing what you've gained. They laughed at your silence, thinking it was the end of the story. They believed they'd won, that you'd vanish into irrelevance while they basked in their imagined triumph. But here's the truth they never understood. Your silence wasn't the end, it was the beginning. It was the moment you reclaimed your power, your peace, and your freedom. It was the space where you started to heal, to grow, and to transform into the person they never saw coming. And now, as they sit there, trapped in their own games, you're living a life they'll never touch. You've built something extraordinary not to prove anything to them, but to prove to yourself that you were always enough. Your silence wasn't about them. It wasn't about waiting for their regret or hoping for their apology. It was about choosing yourself, about stepping away from their chaos and into your own strength. This is what Stoicism teaches us, that our power lies in our ability to master our minds, to let go of what we can't control, and to focus on what truly matters. They thought your silence meant defeat, but in reality, it was the ultimate declaration of freedom. It was your way of saying, I don't need your validation. I don't need your attention. I am whole, I am strong, and I am moving forward. As you continue on this journey, remember this. Your story doesn't revolve around them. They were a chapter, a lesson, a stepping stone, but not the entire book. The life you're building now is yours and yours alone, filled with purpose, joy, and the kind of peace that can only come from within. While they're stuck in the past, you're writing a future so full, so vibrant, that their laughter becomes nothing more than a distant echo. So where do you go from here? The possibilities are endless. Keep focusing on your growth, on the things that bring you joy, and on the relationships that truly matter. Keep pouring your energy into the person you're becoming, a person who no longer needs to seek validation from anyone but themselves. Because you are the prize, you always were. If this message resonated with you, remember, you're not alone in this journey. Together, we're creating a community of strength, resilience, and unwavering self-worth. If you haven't already, consider subscribing so we can continue to walk this path together. And as you move forward, take this truth with you. Their laughter doesn't matter. Their opinions don't define you. What defines you is the life you choose to live and the person you choose to become. Thank you for being here, for sharing this moment, and for stepping into your own power. Your journey is just beginning, and the best is yet to come. Keep rising, keep thriving, and remember, you've already won. See you in the next chapter.